Welcome to another episode of Women in Focus. I have this beautiful book in my hand, and the person who's written this book is our Woman in Focus today. Her name is Parm Lanioldo. Parm, you're most welcome in our program. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm excited to be here and talk about the book.
The minute I saw you, you said, my God, it's been such a long time since we've met each other.
It's been years.
And we've met in our previous lives.
That's right. That's right. We go way back.
Now, this is a beautiful book, My Babaji's Garden. Let's talk a little bit about it.
Okay. What would you like to know?
Why Babaji's Garden? Why did you write this? What is the essence behind it?
Okay. So I grew up in Vancouver. I was born in Vancouver, raised in Vancouver. So I attended elementary school in East Van, Florence Nightingale Elementary.
Right.
And I loved story time. I loved it when the teacher, called us all to the carpet and would read us stories. But I do remember as a young child listening to the stories and not really being able to relate to them.
Yeah.
The storylines were unrelatable and the characters were definitely unrelatable because none of them looked like me. And so that was a thought I had. Now you fast forward and I started my professional career as an elementary school teacher. Mm-hmm. And again, story time was my favorite time, calling all the kids to the carpet and I'd pick a story to read. And again, this time I'd look out at the carpet and none of the kids on my carpet were reflected in the storybooks. The kids came from all kinds of diverse multicultural backgrounds, but they weren't being reflected in the books, and I didn't think the storyline spoke to them. And so I decided, I made myself a promise then that I would write a storybook for children of Indian background that they could relate to. And that's been on my mind for years, and I started this project probably about 3 years ago. And Babaji is actually my dad.
Right.
And the young kids in the book are my niece and nephew.
Ah.
So the story is about my niece and nephew and my father.
I think it's the way you've done it. It's beautiful. He also talks about his life back home.
Yes.
And explains, who he is, what he did earlier. And then over here, talking to the young kids, he explains, how his life has changed as well. So when you, as a teacher, when you got stories to tell, is it in the school curriculum and those are the books that you're supposed to pick, or were you able to pick up books?
No, as an elementary school teacher, I was able to pick books.
Right.
I mean, there are books that are in the curriculum, but you have, you can basically choose to read anything you want to the young kids at story time. And so I'm hoping that teachers will pick this book as one they'd like to read to their kids.
So how long did it take you to write the story? And then, of course, the illustration has got to be done by somebody, and then you have to find someone who prints it.
That's right.
And then it goes to libraries and schools probably, right?
Yeah, so it's so far been about a 3-year process from when I started writing it to getting the illustrations done to having it published. And now I move on to getting it into libraries and schools. So I'm at that phase now.
Now, when you, I like the way you've done the glossary as well, know, Babaji, what does that mean and all that. And I think that is very important. Being a teacher, you know what you need to teach and how you need to explain to kids as to what this story is all about. This being your first book?
Yes.
And there are many more, I presume.
I have plans for my next one already, yes.
Already? Are you writing it already?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Yeah. And how did you find the illustrator? Who is the illustrator on the book?
So I decided to go with self-publishing with this because it gave me full control over illustrations and just how I wanted the whole process to go. And that was really important to me with this book because it was such a personal story.
Yes.
And when I was working with Friesen Press, they gave me different portfolios of illustrators to look at and consider. And these were the illustrators that I thought would probably capture my story best. And I'm so happy with the way the illustrations turned out.
They look just beautiful. I mean, the color combination is just amazing. Did you have to choose the color for his pug, for example, or the clothes?
So, I actually sent the illustrators, I probably totally overwhelmed them, but I sent them so many photographs of, my dad now, my
Yeah.
dad previously.
Right.
So all of the outfits in the story are based on their real clothes that they wear.
Wow.
And even when you look at, the illustration with us as kids in the living room,
Right.
that's actually based on our living room in the 70s.
Right.
So the illustrators really took all the pictures into consideration. And then I sent them images of what, a farm in India would look like,
Like,
what a
yeah.
home in India would look like. And they really did a bang-up job capturing all of that.
That's really fantastic. I can't wait to see your next book. And there are, and I've noticed this, that teachers like you who have noticed that there aren't any stories about us are the ones who are writing these
Yeah.
books. And I
Yes.
think that's fantastic. And I hope that you make this into, would you continue teaching, or are you teaching right now?
No, I left teaching. I had actually gone back and earned my master's in counseling psychology.
Right.
So then I started school counseling for a while.
Okay.
And now I'm in private practice, working primarily with couples.
Beautiful. I want to talk a little bit about you and your life here,
Okay.
being born and brought up here. But let's take a short commercial break, get the program paid for,
Okay,
and then we'll continue.
sounds good.
Parm is our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Parm is our Woman in Focus today. She has written this amazing book, My Babaji's Garden. So, Babaji, of course, your dad, was born in India and came here to Canada, what, in the 70s?
Well, my dad is from the Punjab, and he first went to London, England.
Okay.
He went to London in the mid-60s and then came to Vancouver in the late 60s.
Oh, the late 60s, okay.
Yeah.
So he came here before I came here,
Yes,
because I came here in 1972.
that's right. I know that.
I know how you know that.
We won't say.
We won't say it. I read it in there. So, okay, Parm, being born in a Punjabi household, and that to a Sikh household, how was it? And in was it East Vancouver, South
Yes,
Vancouver?
East Vancouver.
East Vancouver, okay.
Yeah, I grew up in East Van. Very proud of that, by
Yes.
the way. At that time, there weren't a lot of Indian families in Vancouver, at least not where we were growing up.
No.
And my parents came at a time where they really worked hard to fit into the culture and the community while still teaching us about our roots. And I think they did a great job of that. My brother and I grew up speaking fluent Punjabi, and we knew all about our village and our relatives back home. And yet, we were very much a part of the mainstream community. We grew up with putting up Christmas trees, and my parents always gave back to the community. So it was actually, it was a nice balance.
Right. So I think for some kids, as you mentioned, it's a nice balance. But for others, it's a struggle.
Yes.
Because I know that parents, when they leave their own homeland to bring their children over here, I know that they want a good future for their kids, but they forget that probably in the new country they will have to have their kids, assimilate or integrate. Integrate is the right
Integrate,
word,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
But then at home, all the kids have got to speak the language and have got to do the Indian thing. Relatives come, you've got to touch their feet or things like that. And then later on, as they grow older, it's something that either they question and parents can't answer why, or they just stop doing that. And did you find any of that? You didn't, because you said it was comfortable for you to grow in two different cultures.
Well, I think when I first noticed it was probably when I was more university age.
Right.
Or maybe even late high school. But when we were kids, like I said, I didn't really feel that, although we were speaking Punjabi and English at home. And, you know, I grew up wearing Punjabi suits and, you know, we had lots of big Indian dinners. But my parents really valued education, and they treated my brother and I exactly the same, had the same expectations, which was quite unique. And then I guess when I was in late high school and university, things like dating, you know, dating was not something we were supposed to do.
Not allowed to do.
Not allowed to do it. I didn't even think about doing it, actually. So that's when I started to notice that there were some differences.
Okay. So time out. That's a beautiful way of you saying it. I didn't even know. Nobody stopped you.
That's right.
But you didn't even do it. So what was it? Is it the way parents talk at home?
You know, I've often wondered that, because we grew up kind of knowing the rules without the rules ever really been spoken.
Exactly.
Nobody ever said, you can't do this or you should do this.
Yeah.
We just kind of knew.
Yeah.
And we didn't question in the way that young people do now, which I think is a great thing. I think it's good to question things.
Right.
But we didn't really do a lot of questioning. We did a lot of listening. And I mean, in many ways, it served us well. But I have to say, you know, the goal was my parents really wanted us to get a good education.
Right.
And once we were showing we were doing that, then they loosened up about everything else, right? Then the going out wasn't a big issue. The dating wasn't a big issue. Everything loosened once they knew we were on the right track and we were going to take our education and our careers seriously.
So I wish both parents and kids realize that early in life.
Yeah.
You know, that parents aren't there to just squash all your desires and wishes. They're there to flourish you, you know, make you flourish. So it was late in high school or early university that you realized, I can go out and meet guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still, you know, had high expectations,
Right.
which were passed down from my parents without them ever saying anything. But I think that was a good thing. You know, I don't think I would change anything about that. I think it served me well.
Right.
And my parents, I have to say, always really pushed and encouraged. I mean, even this book, I had talked about wanting to write a children's book for years. And,
Right.
you know, my parents were right there saying, when are you going to write your book? Write your book. So a lot of support.
So when you became a teacher,
Yes.
why a teacher?
Oh, I wanted to be a teacher from from the time I was in kindergarten. I used to play school with my cousins and family friends, and they used to get really upset because they said it wasn't fun. They said, you act like a real teacher. You give us real homework. This is supposed to be a game. We're supposed to be playing. But I always wanted to be a teacher. I'm not sure why. My dad was a teacher back home.
Right.
I don't know if that was part of it, but I always wanted to be a teacher, and I loved teaching. And I miss it sometimes, but I'm hoping this children's book will give me an opportunity to go back into classrooms and read the story.
That would be fantastic. So how many years did you teach?
I taught for about 4 years, and then I went back and did my master's.
Right.
And then I went right into school counselling.
Right.
And then I left Vancouver School District to go over to Surrey because I felt like there was a real need for Indo-Canadian counselors there, and there was. And when I left the Surrey School District, I was actually working as a district resource counselor.
Right.
Which was a great role. I loved it. But then it was time for a change again, which is when I went into private practice.
Okay, so I want to talk about the private practice, but prior to that, I want to talk about the name. How do you pronounce your last name?
Lanioldo.
Lanioldo. So I said to her, Lanioldo, oh, so you married an Italian. And she said, no.
No, I didn't. My husband is Jewish, actually, and the last name is a Spanish last name.
Oh.
And so my husband's dad's family was originally in Spain.
I see.
But during the Spanish Inquisition, Jews had a choice. They had to convert to Catholicism or they had a year to leave.
Ah.
And my husband's dad's family chose to leave and go to Syria, but that explains the last name.
Right. Amazing. I want to talk about this Lanioldo guy as well. Well, let's take a short commercial break and come back.
Yeah, you got it.
Parm Lanioldo is our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Our Woman in Focus today is a author, a writer of children's books. Her name is Parm Lanioldo. So Parm, we talked about the last name, Lanioldo. So you
Yes.
married this guy.
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
Well, I met him online, actually.
Online?
Yes, I did, actually. One of my girlfriends talked me into trying it out, and I did. And he was actually the first person I went on a date with. And our date just kind of never ended. We met, and here we are 8 years later, still laughing and together, and yeah.
That's fantastic. So what was it about him that you liked?
I think the first thing that attracted me to him was his sense of humor.
Right.
He's really funny.
Yeah.
And so from the moment I met him, we were just laughing the whole time. And also his confidence and his intelligence. He's extremely bright and he's confident, and that was really attractive to me.
Lovely. You mentioned that you went into practice, psychology, counseling. What is it that the South Asian community has, or issues that we have, are they different from the issues of Canadians, other Canadians? Because we're Canadians as well.
Yes.
Or are they the same sort of issues? Do we have a special hierarchy amongst issues?
I think our issues are unique. I have, Indo-Canadian clients who come to see me because they feel like I understand the cultural piece that they find hard to explain to therapists who don't have that same cultural background.
Right, okay.
It's really hard to explain some of the stuff that we just know,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And I think one unique issue we have is that of extended families and joint families living together.
Right.
I think that's a big one for
Yeah.
our community that is quite different from other communities.
Although, if you look at today's communities, kids are going back to live with their parents.
Well, yeah.
And, and because housing is so difficult to find, to have your own home, so you'd rather live with your own family and save up and then maybe buy a home. So those issues that we have, or no issues, are going to be spread everywhere.
Yes and no. I think there's a difference when it's felt as a choice,
Okay.
Maybe not such a choice if you can't afford to
Right.
live on your own and you're living with your parents, but there's still not that expectation that as a son, you are obligated to live with your parents and take care of them. And as a
that's right.
daughter-in-law, you're obligated to do that.
Right.
And that's a different feeling, I think. I'm not saying it's good or bad.
Yes.
And I've seen...
It's a feeling and it's different.
And it's different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just hone in onto that. The old traditions that we bring with us, all the communities do that. The Italians do that, the Chinese do that, the Indians do that, everybody does that. Because that's something that is ours.
Yes.
Nobody's going to take it away from us. And this is mine, so I'm going to hold on to that. So that holding of those emotions, is that sometimes a hindrance in growth?
I think it can be. I mean, I think there are a lot of good things that come from that. There's a lot of things we bring culturally that are beautiful and that I think we can bring into the communities we live in, and other people can learn from some of our ways. But I think we need to be open-minded as well, and look at where we're living, what do our kids want to do, how do we support them and help them thrive and reach their potential. I think those are all important things, and I'm not saying in our community we don't do that, but I'm saying I do think that a lot of, people in our community, children, I mean, they're adults, but I think they do feel a lot of pressure. They have a lot of different pressures. They have the pressure to succeed academically, professionally, financially. And there's also a pressure, you know, to do what's right for the family.
Right.
And take care of the family. And, you know, that's a whole other level of pressure.
When people come up to you, what are the main issues that they bring in? Is it family struggle or hierarchy or you know, when I talk to young women, and I'm very happy to hear their stories because they all come from different walks of life, and the one that you can see, the ones who are very successful parents are the ones who push them and say, okay, realize your dream.
That's right.
And they realize it, right? And they are thankful to their parents. So is there an issue that we should be cognizant of and then look at it and say, yes, we've got to work towards it?
Oh, I think some people aren't going to like what I'm about to say.
Okay.
But I'm going to say, there are a few things I could say, but the one I would focus on is, you know, treating our daughters and sons equally and kind of seeing that through. Because I think some of what I see is there are a lot of parents now who are pushing their daughters to do well academically, to, you know, become professionals. They're giving them encouragement, they're pushing them, they're giving them opportunities and support. But then when they become young women, we're kind of still expecting the same thing.
Yes.
You know, get married.
Yeah. Have children.
Have children, be a good daughter-in-law, make us proud. So, you know, we need to change that a little bit. I think we need to realize that's not for everybody.
Yes.
And that shouldn't be the ultimate goal, maybe.
Yes, yes, yes. I've been here for so many years, and that is still the problem.
Yeah.
It was a problem in the 70s, it's the problem in the 2022s.
Yes.
So I hope it gets resolved sooner than later.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I am looking forward to you writing another book and coming back and talking to us about it.
I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, thank you so much for coming to the studios and being our Woman in Focus today.
Thank you, Shishwaji.
Parm has been our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back.